He thought he was chasing a dream. A quiet life by the sea, a warm smile across a coffee counter, a fresh start in a country that felt like paradise. But Thailand doesn't always give you what you want. Sometimes, it gives you exactly what you fear. This is the story of a man who gave up everything to build a life with a woman he barely knew. A story of love, control, and quiet collapse. Of cafes and isolation. Of pride, shame, and a one-way ticket home. And by the time he realized what was happening, it was already too late. If you've ever thought about starting over in Thailand, this is the story you need to hear. So stay with me, and don't forget to subscribe to Lost in Thailand. I moved to Hua Hin thinking it would be a fresh start. I was 47, burnt out from years of office life back in the UK. I wasn't fleeing some big drama, I just wanted something different. Somewhere quieter, warmer, less demanding. I'd been to Thailand a few times before. Pattaya felt like a playground I'd outgrown. Phuket was too touristy. But Hua Hin? It had a vibe I liked, a little more reserved. You could walk the streets without someone shouting, "Hello, sexy man," every 5 seconds. There was something else too. At night, the town had this soft glow to it. Night markets lit with warm bulbs, older couples sipping wine in corner cafes, and street musicians playing real instruments, not backing tracks, but actual live jazz. It felt strangely European, clean, calm, and just disconnected enough from the rest of the madness. That's where I met Dao. She worked in a quiet coffee shop down a side street, not one of those trendy chain places, just a small local spot with metal chairs, old fans buzzing overhead, and the kind of worn-down charm that felt honest. Dao wasn't pushy or loud. She barely even smiled when we first spoke. Maybe that's why I noticed her. She brought me my coffee, nodded politely, and walked off. That's it, and weirdly, I liked that. I started going back every morning. It became part of my routine. Coffee at 9, same table by the window, same quiet acknowledgement from Dao. After a while, she started adding a little small talk, asking where I was from, how long I was staying. One morning, she brought me a bottle of water without me asking, said it was hot outside. It felt simple, natural. I wasn't even trying to start anything. I just liked talking to her. We started seeing each other outside the cafe. Small things. She showed me the best place for grilled chicken. Took me to a beach I never would have found on my own. Brought me to meet her cousins one night. Just a beer and barbecue kind of evening. No performance, no show. After a couple months, she started staying over. I didn't feel like a tourist anymore. I felt like maybe, finally, I was part of something here. I wasn't rich. I had some savings, a bit of freelance work online, and a pension that hadn't quite kicked in yet. But in Thailand, that money stretched further. Enough to rent a condo, eat out, and not think too much about the future. One night, over beers on the balcony, Dao said something that stuck with me. She said, "You don't look stressed like the other foreigners." I laughed. I told her that's because I'd finally escaped the life that made me feel like I was drowning. I didn't realize then, I was just trading one kind of trap for another. A few months in, Dao quit her job at the cafe. She said the owner was rude, and she wanted to try something new. I asked her what she wanted to do, and she smiled. "We open our own coffee shop." At first I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. She already had a place in mind, a small unit not far from the night market. Decent foot traffic, low rent, and perfect, she said. And to be fair, she wasn't wrong. It was a decent spot. Quiet but central. Enough to build something. I don't know what made me say yes. Maybe I liked the idea of building something together. Maybe I was lonely in ways I didn't fully understand. Maybe I just wanted to believe that this us was real. So I said yes. We used most of my savings. The lease was in her name, the business license too. I didn't think much of it at the time. It's Thailand, right? That's just how things are done. I paid for the equipment, the espresso machine, tables, signage, a new air conditioner. It added up fast. Dao was excited. She worked hard, I'll give her that. She picked out the staff, handled the menus, the suppliers, the schedule, I mostly stayed in the background. She said I didn't need to worry about the day-to-day. Relax, you worked your whole life. Let me take care of it now. And it sounded nice. It really did. But looking back, I realize now, that was the start of the distance. I wasn't a partner in the cafe, I was just the wallet. In the beginning, I didn't mind stepping back. I'd sit outside with a book while she ran things. I liked watching her work, confident, focused, in control. But after a while, she started making decisions without even mentioning them. Changing the menu, hiring a new barista, adjusting prices. When I asked, she smiled. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. I wanted to believe her, but slowly I began to feel like a guest in my own project. I wasn't even allowed behind the counter. She said it looked bad if foreigners worked, said it would bring problems. Let me talk to the police if they come. You sit. I did sit, a lot, and I watched. I watched our regulars come and go. I watched staff whisper when I walked in. I watched the tip jar disappear one day and never come back. When I asked Dow about it, she brushed it off. You think too much, don't make drama. And I started to believe that. Maybe I was just paranoid. It got worse when I tried to make small suggestions, like offering breakfast sets for tourists. She shut it down instantly. No, Thai people don't eat that. But we weren't getting Thai people. We were getting foreigners, people like me. I wasn't trying to take control. I just wanted to feel included. Instead, I started to notice something else. Every time I brought up money, Dow would go cold, distant, or she'd flip it around. You don't trust me? After everything I do for you? I didn't want to fight, so I let it go. Again, I stopped seeing my expat friends. Not because I wanted to. At first I'd still message them, grab a beer, catch up. But every time I told Dow I was going out, she'd shift. Her tone would change, her eyes too. Why you need to go out? You don't like spending time with me? Sometimes she'd go silent for hours. Other times, she'd suddenly have a headache or start crying. I wasn't stupid. I knew it was manipulation. But I also didn't want to hurt her. So I started canceling plans, one by one. Until I had none left. The only people I saw were the cafe staff, and they weren't talking to me anymore. Dow told them I was just the old foreigner who pays the bills, a sponsor, not a boss, not someone to listen to. And you could feel it. They smiled to my face, but you could tell they were her people, not mine. I became this invisible figure sitting at the back table every morning, a part of the furniture, nothing more. It's a strange thing, feeling alone in a place you helped build. I tried to talk to Dow once, to really talk. I told her I was feeling left out, that I wanted us to do things together again. Maybe take a trip, close the cafe for a weekend. She stared at me for a moment and said flatly, "Money first, maybe later." Then she got up, walked into the kitchen, and slammed the door behind her. That night she didn't come home. She said she stayed at her cousin's. I never asked if that was true. I didn't want the answer. The cafe wasn't doing well. At first, it had promise. A few tourists, some locals. But after the newness wore off, the tables stayed empty more often than not. The night market nearby got noisier. A newer cafe opened 2 blocks down, air-conditioned, with Instagram walls and cold brew in glass bottles. We couldn't compete with that. I brought it up gently. Dow didn't want to hear it. People come back, we just wait. But they didn't, and waiting meant burning through what little money I had left. I checked the account one day, quietly, on my phone. It was almost gone. I didn't even know when it happened. I'd been topping it up, small transfers from my UK bank when needed, but she had full access, and I never tracked the day-to-day. Stupid, I know. I confronted her that evening. She didn't deny it, just looked at me and said, "You say you love me, but now you care more about money?" I didn't answer, because deep down, I couldn't tell if she was lying, or if I had just let it happen. From that point on, things shifted. She started going out more. Said it was to promote the cafe, meet people, bring business. She'd come home late, sometimes drunk, sometimes not at all. I asked questions. She gave answers. But they were vague, cold. I stopped asking. The cafe limped along. We had 2 staff left, both teenagers who spent more time scrolling their phones than serving customers. Dao didn't care, or maybe she just didn't want to admit it was falling apart. Neither did I. I stopped opening my banking app. There was no point. Every time I looked, it only made me feel more useless, more trapped. I wasn't even sure what I was still paying for. The cafe had become a ghost. The customers were gone. The staff barely showed up. And Dao, she was always somewhere else. One night I stayed in the cafe after closing. Lights off, just me at the back table. I sat there in the dark for over an hour. No music, no phone, just silence. And the sound of a dying fan spinning above me. It hit me hard. This wasn't my life anymore. This wasn't ours either. It was hers. All of it. Her name on the lease, her name on the permits, her choices, her control. And me? I was just the guy who paid for it all. A foreigner sitting alone in a coffee shop he didn't own. I wanted to tell someone, to scream it out, but I had no one left. I'd pushed them all away. Dao made sure of that. Or maybe I let her do it. When I got back to the condo, Dao wasn't there. No message, no explanation. I waited until midnight, then 2 a.m. She came home at 4, smelled like perfume and whiskey. She smiled like nothing was wrong. Crawled into bed and passed out without saying a word. And I just stood there, in the dark, watching her sleep, wondering who the hell I had become. A week later I told Dao I wanted out. Not a dramatic fight, not shouting, just quiet words over breakfast that she barely listened to. I think we should close the cafe, maybe sell the equipment. I need to go back for a bit, get things sorted. She didn't even look up from her phone, just said, "Do whatever you want." But I couldn't do whatever I wanted. I had no money left, not enough for a ticket, not enough for rent, not enough for anything. I'd burned through my savings. My backup plan was long gone. I tried reaching out to friends back home. Pride held me back from asking for help directly, but I sent a few polite messages, just checking in. No one replied right away. A few had changed numbers. Others were busy. Life had moved on without me. I checked flights anyway, Bangkok to London. Even the cheapest option was out of reach. And in that moment it hit me. I wasn't stuck in Hua Hin. I was stuck in her world, with no tools, no map, and no way out. A few days later, I woke up to an empty apartment. No Dao, no note, no text. I went to the cafe. The door was locked, the staff were gone, and the sign had been taken down. Just like that, it was over. All of it. And I didn't even have the keys. I tried calling Dao. The number rang twice and then went dead. I walked to her cousin's place. No one answered. I went back to the condo, and my key didn't work anymore. She changed the lock. That was it. No fight, no explanation, just erased. I sat on the curb outside the building for over an hour, sweat soaking through my shirt. People walking past like I didn't exist. No cafe, no partner, no money, no roof. And the worst part, I still didn't feel angry. I felt embarrassed. I checked into a cheap guest house with the last cash I had. 4 walls, a fan, a mattress that smelled like old beer. It felt like I'd been dropped out of my own life and into someone else's, someone sadder, smaller, more pathetic. I stopped shaving, stopped caring what time it was. I ate from 7-Elevens, walked the back streets just to avoid running into people I knew. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want lectures. I just didn't want anyone to see me like this. Weeks passed like that. One day I bumped into an expat I used to drink with. He barely recognized me. We sat down for a beer. I told him the short version. He didn't judge me, just nodded and said, "It happens more than you think." Then he reached into his wallet and gave me 10,000 baht. "Pay me back when you can, or don't. Just go home, mate. This place'll eat you alive if you stay too long." And that was the first time I let myself cry, right there in the middle of a bar, over a warm beer. I didn't buy the ticket right away. I went back to the guest house and started watching flights. I had the laptop open like a gambler at 3 a.m. refreshing flight prices on every low-cost site I knew. Bangkok to London, with stopovers, no checked bags, food not included. Didn't matter. Every hour, I checked again. Skyscanner, Google Flights. I even tracked departures from Suvarnabhumi in real time, just to see who was in the air. It felt like everyone was getting out but me. I found one, 38 hours, 2 layovers, red-eye out of Don Mueang. Ugly flight, cheap seat, but it was my ticket out, and I booked it. I didn't sleep the night before the flight. Not because I was excited, because I was scared I'd miss it, or that something would go wrong, that I'd show up and they'd tell me the booking failed, or that my passport wasn't valid, or some other twist would keep me there another day, another week, another year. I left the guest house 6 hours early, took the first minivan out of town, arrived at Don Mueang long before check-in even opened, just sat in the food court, sipping on a bottle of water, watching families and couples and people who weren't trying to disappear. At the gate, I watched the runway, listened for my name, waited for someone to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Sorry, sir, there's been a problem." But it never came. I boarded that plane like a ghost. Didn't speak, didn't look back, didn't breathe properly until we were above the clouds, and the screen in front of me showed that we were finally heading west. No music, no drinks, just silence. And for the first time in months, I felt weightless. Not free, but lighter. Back in the UK, it wasn't dramatic. Just gray skies and rain and the same old bus from Heathrow into the city. My brother picked me up, said I looked like shit, handed me a takeaway coffee, and didn't ask any questions. I told him I'd explain everything later. I never did. It's been a year now. I'm working again, something simple, manual, nothing glamorous, but I earn enough to pay rent. I sleep without sweating through the sheets. I eat without counting change. Sometimes on my lunch break, I open Google Maps and look at Hua Hin, zoom into the street, see if that cafe's still there. It's not. New sign, new name, new owners. Dow's profile vanished months ago. Maybe she moved on. Maybe she's doing the same thing to someone else. I'll never know. And honestly, I don't need to. So why am I telling you all this? Because I know someone out there is booking their one-way ticket, thinking they'll find something in Thailand that's missing from their life. And maybe they will. But maybe they'll find exactly what I did, the slow, quiet unraveling of everything they thought they had under control. If this story meant something to you, if it hit too close to home, do one thing for me. Subscribe to Lost in Thailand, because the dream is real, but so is the fall. Thanks for listening.